Good morning, everyone. Kieran Swale here from Southern Regional College, and a very warm welcome to our number 7 in our summer webinar series. And this morning, it's lean implementation for SMEs in all industries, led by my colleague Jimmy Moore, who's an industrial specialist and a background in manufacturing, engineering, and lean practices, and quite a long list that he'll be able to tell you about. It's been great to offer these now we reflect on that this is the 7th one. There's been great learning shared with businesses, and what we're going to do with the 7, we're going to do a summary of each seminar, and we're going to attach each of the YouTube videos. So that'll be with anybody who's signed up for any of the webinars. That we're trying to get that finalized for the end of next week. This webinar series has been supported by Connected NI. And today we are ably assisted by Brian, Sarah, and Aisling. And again, I say this every week, just get ready. There's a few very, very valid pointers here for your business, practical tips that you can implement. And also, if you're looking for further advice, get in touch with Jimmy and Brian and any of our engineers or food specialists after this webinar. So, thanks again for tuning in, or if you're listening to this later on YouTube, I hope you're enjoying it. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Jimmy Moore. Jimmy, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Hear me okay yet?
Yep.
So thanks very much, everybody, for attending this morning. As Kieran has said, I'm going to take you through a brief overview of how you implement leans into SMEs, and I'm going to try and give you a flavour how it can be done in all industries and all organisations. So first, a little bit about me. I've worked in senior management positions in different industries, SMEs and multinationals, for over 20 years now. I've worked manufacturing, supply chain, customer service, and what I've ended up doing for the last 15 or so of those years is transformation projects. And that's about taking a company or a large department within a larger company and basically taking it from A to B according to what the shareholders and what the stakeholders want. So along that journey, I've basically picked up a lot of knowledge and experience and expertise in operational excellence and process improvement and change management. So at the minute, I'm working for the SRC, and I also do a bit of work for my own company, which is AAC Business Support. So this morning's session, we're going to basically go over what is lean, where it came from, what's in it, and what does it look like after you've done it. How is it implemented? I'm going to focus a lot on value. It's one of its main components. I'm going to look at how it's done in manufacturing, because that's where it started, how you would do it in an administration office type environment. And I'm also going to take a look at the customer facing industries, customer service and hospitality and things like that. Finally, we're going to end up looking at, well, if you do think you need to do this, or you think it's relevant to you, how do you go about it? Where do you start? So it's about learning to see, figuring out what your deployment is, and also then deciding to have some engagement with somebody like ourselves, like a college. So the outcomes for me for this presentation would be, or for this webinar would be, I would like to think that you have a bit more clarity on what lean is, and understand for your business what can it deliver. And so really the main thing is be able to decide, yes, it's for me, or no, it's not, or I don't know, I need to ask a few more questions. So on to what is lean thinking. Bit of history first of all. It started off with the Toyota production company, or the Toyota car company, and they call it the Toyota production system. It was started off by Mr. Toyota himself, who basically took it up and he copied the workflow methods and the types of stuff that Ford were doing in the US and got it started up pre-war. Then post-war, the real driver of it was a man called Teiichi Ono, who basically he invented the Toyota production system, and he basically, along with his management team, figured out how to do things the lean way. As all things lean, they discovered you have to have and understand your business drivers, and for them it was they needed to compete with the US in cost. The US car industry at that stage was going through its golden era, and they were kicking the crap out of all the opposition, to use an expression. So they wanted to focus on growth, to be able to compete in costs, and to do that they needed to get cash. And to get cash, they need to be able to convert their profit from what they're making into cash as quickly as possible. And that's why lean is as much a time-based as an improvement-based methodology. So what is it? On the left here, off the left of the screen, you'll see a graphic which is described as the house of lean. And I don't want to go into too much detail because there's too much there. And if you decide to do lean, you go into this in a lot more detail. But really what they're saying is our goal, what we want to get to, is highest quality, lowest cost, shortest lead time. So how do we go about that? And they broke it down into three main areas. They said, right, okay, to do that, we need to make sure that our manufacturing environment is stable, that we're not run about all over the place, we're not busy fools. Then we need to make sure that materials that are coming to us are just in time, like we're getting things exactly when we need them, as opposed to sorting through lots of stock and things like that. And the third thing that the Toyota brought in, which basically revolutionized this approach, was Judoka. It's the approach to quality. So what they did is they basically brought in an approach to quality which fixed things on the line there and then. So again, just a wee bit more detail. Vistability, they brought in some methodologies, they level loaded the production, they made sure that the workload was balanced among operators on the line, that everybody had the same amount of work. They made sure that it was nice and neat and tidy and everybody knew where everything was, and they standardized the work so it was easy to train. For the just in time, they made sure they were built in according to what the customer demand was. They made sure the stuff was on the line beside them, and they tried to make things in as small batches as possible, and they only pulled according to demand. And finally, automation is the quality standard they had. That's where you try and pick up your quality issues automatically on the line, and if there's an anomaly, you stop the line, which is different from what anybody else has been doing at the time. That meant that you got a real-time fix, and you also were able to find out real-time what the actual root cause of the problem was. And when they did that, after 10, 15 years of doing it, they got the highest quality, lowest cost, shortest lead time, and they're the most competitive in the field. So when they did it, what did it look like? These are four elements which they come from an article in the HBR, which was done in the late 90s, early 2000s by Stephen Spear and Kent Bowen. And it's one of those ones that I read, and it switched the light on for me about what it actually means with lean. So like, I went through what you do and how people do it and what the methods were. But when I saw this, it got me to be able to recognize, well, what does it look like after you've done it? So you know, have I done it right or have I not? So if you've done lean, it means that the work is very highly specified. It means that everybody knows exactly what they're meant to be doing. So there's no room for interpretation or people doing things that they're not meant to be doing. Everybody who's doing work knows who's going to give it them, what it is, and when they're going to get it. So it's a time-based thing. Every product and service has got a specified path, and it's very easy to understand, so it's easily trained. And if you're going to do improvement, or you're going to change the process, it has to be done through a scientific method. So that means when people are making changes, they're not affecting these other three things. So right, Kieran, yeah?
Yeah, good. I think that's a fantastic diagram. I'm smiling, and I don't know if my colleagues are looking at this. I'm going, you know, is that idyllic there? Wouldn't that be brilliant if we all had that?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at things. There's real clarity with that model that you're putting forward there.
Yeah. So yeah,
I'm just wondering, you know, in the businesses that I've worked, which have been service-related industries, particularly in tourism and hospitality, you know, to get to number one where they have the in the salmon-coloured box down to the green box with the improvement, it's very clear who does what. There doesn't seem to be this model to be any ambiguity.
Yeah. So that's basically what that's what lean implementation, lean thinking is all about here. It's about the removal of ambiguity. Everybody knows exactly what they're meant to be doing. You can train it, people can understand it, and you get to the stage where when you go on and look at it, when it's being done, you can see it being done. In some service industries where things are being done online or digitally, it's a bit more difficult. But then you've got solutions so that you can see through metrics and through data that's coming through how are things being done. So it's very, very easy to see, is this being done right or not? It's also very easy.
I really like that model, Jimmy. I know you talked about it was Harvard Business Review probably years ago, but you know, that really does break it down. And I think for anyone listening to this, that's you know, that's the foundation that you could build from. No, thank you.
Yeah, I would certainly suggest, Kieran, that we'll share this after the webinar, but I share the details of what the article is. But it is one of those ones, there's lots of literature in lean, but that's one of the ones I'd say, if you want to understand it, you read that.
Yep.
And just to say, it is widely implemented. These are some of the bigger companies in the world that have introduced lean: service, manufacturing, hospitality, banks, everybody. So everybody has taken it, spent a bit of money on it, went and did it, and the vast majority have seen benefits. I put Amazon in a big box there by itself because it is probably the biggest component of lean in the world at the minute. They're probably leaner than Toyota. So if something's done within Amazon, everybody knows why it's done, how long it's meant to take, who's meant to do it. And if it doesn't happen that way, there's a team of people down investigating why not, to try and fix it. So like they are a really good example of lean and how it can be implemented. So how is it implemented? Leading on to that. First of all, I'll introduce you to a few organizations. These are not-for-profit organizations that I've used a lot over the last 20 years to get more information. They get funding from governments and from some of their more wealthy members, but they also do sell literature. So if you want to buy the literature, if you want to get the literature, you do have to buy it. But they have got websites where they've got webinars and podcasts and blogs, and they are a wealth of information and support if you want to go this journey. And as I said, they're not for profit, so their heart's in the right place. I would suggest if you get the bug to go and look at some more information, these are the places to go. But what they will tell you, and all of what's in all of the literature and all of the advice is that it's broken down into 5 main areas. First thing you do is you identify what the value according to your customer is, and you focus on it first of all. So that is the most important one. If you get that right, you're basically on a good road. The second thing you do is then, once you've figured out what that value is, you use a methodology called value mapping, and it's something you have to learn, and we can support you to figure out what that is and coach you on how to use it. But it's a methodology for figuring out where's the waste, and it brings in tools on how to eliminate that waste. Then there are 2 things called enhanced product flow and build what customer pulls. So that's basically flow and pull. So flow is about getting rid of all the barriers, either within your administration, within your offices, within the manufacturing physical setup, or within your services of different things you have to jump through to get to different screens. It's about making sure that if it's either there's information or a product or a service you want, that has flown towards the customer with as little inhibition as possible. And it's about identifying where those inhibitions are and trying to remove them. And pull is about saying, right, don't only build something or only supply something as the customer wants it. And for, like Kieran, you were saying about your hospitality and that type of thing, if you look at the hospitality industry, they already have pull and an awful lot of flow money, because that's the way they deal with their customers. It's one at a time, and the customer wants it as quickly as possible. So they've already adapted some of those things. Like a lot of customers or a lot of manufacturing companies can probably go into hospitality and learn a few things about how to do those things. So, without them knowing it, they're partially lean anyway. And the 5th part then is you have to strive for perfection, and doing that you have to empower the people. So it's about involving your workforce, making sure they buy into it, and using them as a resource to implement this. So it really does become a company-wide, a team, approach to how to improve your business. Value, first of all. So this is one that a former sales director in a company that I worked for used to come out with all the time when he was trying to berate our engineers for over-designing something. Is like, our customers who buy drills don't actually want to drill. What they want is a smooth, well-formed hole. So it's about understanding that level of, well, what is what the customer wants versus what it is I'm making. Most people who build businesses and SMEs have spent most of their lives trying to build products and design products and get products that people will buy. And it's very difficult for them to sit down and then try and separate that from and have that very unemotional conversation with themselves to say, well, is that really what somebody wants? But lean is something that teaches you to do that. And again, there's literature you can read, and we can do a bit of coaching on how to go about it. But it's about taking the emotion out of the analysis, first of all, and speaking to your customers as well. Saying, well, what is that you actually want? We're having a wee bit of a crisis of confidence here. Like, we want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So go and talk to them. And then go back into your company and use consensus techniques. You try and involve the people the key stakeholders, the people who influence within your company, try and involve those early on to get consensus of what this value is. Because if you do that, then you'll get more traction later on. Value mapping, then again, I don't want to go through this in great detail. It's something that you would spend a half a day to maybe 2 days going through when you're doing your training and your coaching. But it's basically it's a form of process mapping, but it's got tools and it's got visual aids to identify where waste is very quickly. And what you do is you get your process map, you identify the waste, you figure out which one you're going to go after to remove. That gives you a future state. You implement, repeat. And you just, when you're in your lean company, you just go around this cycle all the time, and you use this method to be able to do it. Flow is about understanding that both in service and in data processes and in most industries, what we do is we batch process. So we identify processes, we batch, produce, or use them to get what we want, and then we hand it on to the next person in the queue. Lean says, no, you shouldn't really do that, because that basically exposes yourself to, at each of all of these stages, you could have quality issues, and it slows the whole thing down. So as much as possible, get as small as possible batches and get that through to the customer, and it'll shorten your lead time significantly. It removes WIP and it reduces the risk of the quality issues that we talked about earlier. That's the theory of that. Pull then is simple enough to understand. It's like, instead of you building in batches and trying to predict and forecast, saying, right, figure out what the customer wants, pull through your system according to what they require. It means you're only ever building what you need, you're building according to what your customer wants, and you're doing it an awful lot more quickly than you would have to do it the other way. Easy said, quite difficult to do actually. So this is one of the more advanced parts of Lean. And then empower the people. Kaizen is one of the main elements of Lean companies and authority production system. It's when you go to one of their factories, you'll see it all over the place. It's little bits of continuous improvement that's being done all the time. Everybody's trained how to do it. Something happens, go and find out what it's wrong, try to fix it, identify the people that I talked about earlier within the scientific method, the experts, and make sure the process isn't changed properly. And this is all about getting teams set up, getting people used to the elements of change management, good communication, and promoting the involvement of the workforce. So it means that everybody's doing it together, and it becomes a company-wide thing.
Jimmy, could I ask you a question about Kaizen? I happen to know it, I haven't used it, but it seems to be one of the models that's come forward, certainly in terms of communication, PR, and people know about it. Could you take the Kaizen and implement it on its own, or does it have to be? Or is it?
A lot of people do that, but that's if you take up the slides.
Yeah.
Really, they always present the slide in this order, but really you can start here if you want. This bottom one, you can start to say, right, I want to improve a few things, and I call it Kaizen. But Kaizen really is, it's an approach, it's a mindset as much as anything else. It's saying, right, okay, if something happens, I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to work back from that. So, okay, right, if I'm going to take that approach, what do I need to do? And it always comes down to, well, I need to identify the people who are going to do the fixing and work out, do they have the skill set? If they don't have the skill set, I'm going to have to give it to them.
Is it fair to assume then that on that slide, Kaizen empowerment is really at the heart of that?
Yes, it is. It's right across it. So at each of those other parts, Kaizen will come in. But I think where Kaizen is most important, it brings a lot of the visibility of what needs to happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Again, I don't want to get into too much technical detail, but if you go to a lean factory, there's a thing called an andon, which is what it's a cord that you pull to stop the line. And for every time you pull a cord to stop the line, there needs to be a Kaizen event. Okay, too much detail? That's fine.
I worked long time ago. I worked on the factory line in a industrial catering unit.
Yeah.
And you know what? They had the big red button, you know.
Yes, that's the big red button. So Kaizen is every time.
If you put honestly, if you did that, whoa!
Yeah.
Who stopped the belt? Honestly,
So
like the place just stopped. The factory just stopped.
It's exactly that process. So because the factory stops, so your production line stops, and for every time you press that button, there has to be a Kaizen, and that's
okay.
So somebody has to fix
got
it. All right. So it becomes culture. That's the main thing to say. So to give an overall, for people who have not really looked at this before or don't really understand it, I'm trying to break it down into simpler terms. So this is what businesses do. They define a process, which makes a product. They execute it to make the product or service, and they deliver the product service to the customer. Traditionally, this is what happens the other way about. If you're lucky and the customer isn't happy, they get a complaint. Sometimes the customer just goes away. And that complaint, again, if you're lucky and you've got a good process in place, that will force an intervention into how you execute the process and how you define the process, and something will be improved. Lean says, okay, why would you do that? Why don't you just define what the value is for the customer, and then basically build it, hard coded into your system that you're constantly analyzing what the process is, so you're optimizing that, and you're removing all of those elements that are not giving value to the customer. That means you're in this continual circle of not having to worry about your customer coming back and complaining all the time. You know exactly what they want. You are looking at your processes and your systems to see, are you giving them that? And you're continually working to try and see, can you improve it in any way to make sure you're doing it even better than you were before? So that's basically what Lean is all about. So that's simple gear. Okay. So that's manufacturing and the theory for another area. So I just thought I'd go through a few other elements of business where people are going, well, it doesn't work here, it doesn't work there, and you work, how would it do it? And these are areas that I have covered myself in companies that I've worked for. So lean administration is it's actually one of the easiest ones to do, because it's a really regimented, and I'm talking about sales order process, accounts, purchasing, those types of departments within small to medium-sized organizations where people are pushing paper or bits of information about, which are critical to the run of the business. So you apply the same principle. If you identify what the value is, and the value is then as you go, who's the customer first of all, who's getting the information, and see what exactly they want. Do your value mapping, see is it flowing, can you pull it through the system, and try and bring some continuous improvement. You do get a lot of resistance from people in administration because I do things in different orders, but then you can bring in workload balance and cross train to make sure everybody's got the same amount of work. And instead of this very busy graphic, nice cartoon that I picked up off the internet here, you end up with a nice controlled environment here where it's pulled in, the customer's very happy, big smiles. You've got this nice controlled, no paper in it, and everybody's flowing the stuff through according to the way it's meant to be done. So an idyllic example, but I actually have done this 3 times, 3 different organizations, and it does work. You get a lot more resistance from the people doing it, but that's when we start talking about, okay, it's about the change management skill that you need to do it, but it definitely does work. Mm-hmm. Then in customer facing industries, again, spoken or worked in a lot of companies that's had customer facing elements to them, which I have managed. And for me, it's about understanding what's the difference between the manufacturing and the customer facing side of things. So manufacturing looks like this. The sort of pinky, orangey box is where you deal with the customer. So you deal with the order, you deal when you're completed, and sometimes you get an interaction. In between, when it comes to manufacturing, production, quality checks, delivery is all done discreetly. So you can do it offline, you can work your problems. The customer never sees if you've got problems. They might think you're fantastic, even though you're like the duck with the feet paddling underneath the water. Services, you can't do that because you've got the customer in your face all the time. So you do not have the ability to make mistakes. You have to be on your game. So I would kind of turn that on its head and say, okay, well, that means you do need something like Lean. You need to make sure you're on your game, so you need to get rid of all those problems. What are the obstacles? The transactions are definitely more complex. Each customer comes on, they think that they're different, and they are different because you have to treat them differently. There's a lot of variation and efficiency levels on the people who are actually doing the job. As I said, it's mostly done digitally. So how do you check to see is somebody following a process or not? And the cyclicality of demand is very high. So especially in banks and in food places, like you don't know when customers are coming in. You don't have queue systems. So what are you going to do? So again, the Lean methods, the Lean tools are applicable to try and improve these things. So you can value map people's processes and say, okay, well, can we take the waste out to make sure you're maximizing value? You definitely can, and I've done it. So variability in users, do standard work. You go through and find out what's best practice and get standard work on there. Say this and involve the whole team. Say, okay, we all agree these are the best ways of doing this because these are the best. John does the best that way. Helen does the best thing in that part of the process. So do that, get the team together, and come up with a standard way of doing it. And then just visual systems. If you're working with data, you can get that up on the screen very, very easily nowadays. And again, the college can support in doing things like that. And pull and flow is definitely applicable to service industry. So you can work out roughly what the demand is going to be, and because you're getting efficiencies for implementing something like lean, you can overstock or overman to make sure you've got the right amount of people coming in all the time. And what I say is that earlier slide, coming back to the one you're saying, Kieran, if you look at this and if you ask yourself the question, well, is this applicable to a service type industry or customer facing type industry? Is this an environment that you would want to get your business into? And it's yes every time for every one of them. Like it'll be fantastic if you get your business into this type of shape. And lean gives that opportunity, at least to go at it and go at parts of it. So I'll give an example. This is something I was involved in myself. I was with a service provider for online apparel for corporate workwear, and I managed the operations. We thought we were doing very well. Customers had good feedback from the products, and they loved our IT system with an online ordering system, and we'd adapted it. It was really, really good. And but the customers came back to the salespeople to say they were not happy with customer service response. So we already had targets in place. We were measuring it to 48 hours to say, okay, well, are we on average hitting 48 hours, and are we hitting at least 90% of our customers are getting that response within 48 hours? And in the 26 weeks that we looked at, we had hit our targets. The data was coming through spreadsheets from basically collected from the customer service agents at the end of each week. So we thought, listen, we've got a problem. We look at a value map and we do it in a customer service process. So first thing, we went to value. We went to our top 6 contracts, which took up about 80% of our revenue. And we said, okay, listen, we're measuring 48 hours. What do you actually see as value? They said, no, that's too late. That you need to come back to the same day. Usual discussion of, well, somebody comes in with an inquiry at 4:45. Do you expect that? He says, well, we expect an email in our inbox when we come in the next morning. Yes, we do, because that's what our business requires. So that's value to us for our customers. So you need to give it to us. We remeasured this. We remeasured it, and we found that we were actually hitting that expectation 25% of the time. So it made it very clear. Yes, we did have some fairly not happy customers out there because of what we were doing. Did the value mapping. What we found was there was, as I mentioned earlier, what people were doing, there was a high level of variation between each customer service person. Different people were doing different ways. They've been trained in a very generic way how to do it, buddy system, but it obviously wasn't specific enough. We had an ERP system, and some people knew how to use it very well. Some people kind of knew it, and some people didn't know and had to continue going to ask, well, where do we get this information? Because we're working on an account basis, the workload, there was a high level of imbalance depending on when the inquiries came through. Some days somebody would be slaughtered, another day they wouldn't be, and it went across the accounts like that. And that would affect how responsive they could be. We know our ERP system, we weren't pulling data from it. The inquiries were just being either phone calls and emails. We had no way of monitoring how many there were, or whether they answered or whether not. And the other thing was we found is like we knew that an awful lot of these issues were because of pick issues from the warehouse, but there was no formal system there to sit down with the warehouse. It was just a bit of a complaint at the lunchtime, and that was it. So what do we do? Standardization of our processes. We figured out what was the best way of doing. We broke it down into there's 10 different ways of 10 different elements of what they did, and we found out what the best practicables. Everybody agreed, retrained, and did it. The ERP system, same sort of thing. We found out the different ways and the different words required, trained everybody how to do it. For the imbalance and the workload balancing, we basically, for all the main accounts, we made sure that there was 2 and sometimes 3 people able to do it, and we put all of the inquiries into the queue. So that we said, okay, once it's 4 hours old, somebody has to pick it up. And brought in reports, automated the data, and we put all of our inquiries onto a program management, free program management software off the internet, and made sure it was very visible. And then we set up a weekly review, which we had now data for with the warehouse to say, okay, well, what are you doing? These are killing us here with our customers. How are we going to improve things? And just to put those into lean terms, we worked on the flow, we worked on the pull, we worked on our visual management, and we worked on the perfection side of it, which are all lean tools. Mm-hmm. And what was the outcome? Well, delivery went from 25% and we up to 95%, and we did it within 6 weeks. It was, once we did these things, it just changed it. And when people were a lot happier because they were getting a lot fewer complaints. The quality service errors dropped because we weren't really focused on quality, but because we were dealing with the warehouse and we'd identified that was one of the root causes, it improved anyway. And we hadn't even thought about the cost of it. But the result of this was, out of a team of 7 people, we were thinking of hiring another person because of another key account. We didn't have to because we had freed one person up. And we hadn't even tried to reduce cost. So that's a good example of what you can do in service environments and how powerful lean can be.
Jimmy, could I take you back? Could I just before it's probably back about 4 slides. So, in terms of identifying, and you consulted with your customer base, yeah, just there. So, how did you do that? I think you talked about like your top clients or X percentage of your clients.
Yeah.
Could you tell me how you actually did that?
We had a contracts director, and I asked him to set up. I was responsible for this, so I set up meetings with him. And we had a team lead within the customer service department, and he went along with me. So we just sat down and listened, and we said, okay. And it was like a 2-3 hour conversation about, well, how can we improve service? And that was, we're very keen to improve things. And
was that a face-to-face conversation? You went out to meet one of your main clients? Yes.
Yes, we went out and met them.
Okay.
So and when you're identifying the value side of things, it's a good marketing thing as much as anything else. Sure, your customers are serious about it. You say, like, I'm very serious. We're doing this thing called lean. We want to make sure we're maximizing the value to you. But to do that, we need to sit down and have another conversation to make sure we're right. And that's basically what we did. Like we had very good relationships with these people anyway, because we were doing a continual daily, weekly shipments, but we're also doing huge drops to them once a year.
Yeah.
So we had that sort of planning cycle with them where they'd be with us, they'd be in our pocket basically for 4 or 5 weeks of the year prior to it. So we used that opportunity for each one of them to say, listen, we want to have a chat about this too. Can you help us out?
I think this probably happens organically in business, but here you have a model which, if you like, forces you or stipulates that you must consult as a key way of finding out what's going on. Now we all say, oh yes, inverted commas, we listen to our customers, and then we get taken over by the actual daily running of the business. But with this model, you have to identify the lags, if you like, in production or the problems in service. You need to go out. In this case, in your example, you have actually consulted face to face. There's obviously a number of ways of doing that, but I imagine, I don't know the value of your client base, but I imagine that was extremely worthwhile long term in terms of customer retention and customer loyalty. So I'm taking this as a really important learning for me this morning with lean. Really, really important.
Yeah. So kind of on that point, Kieran, it's something that I was taught early to do with one of the multinationals. I was an operations guy who was stuck out in front of customers because the bigger companies do expect your senior operations guys to be able to do that, and the customers expect to be able to sit down and talk to your operations guys. Whereas in smaller companies, it's like hide that away. The salespeople and the most senior people talk to the customers, and that's it. Whereas that's another thing you kind of need to be thinking of. So, really what you're doing is you're opening up what you're doing to your customer. So if you're going to sell this, you're going to have to show them what you're doing.
Transparency.
Yeah, and and it's scary. It is when you do it, because every time a customer's come to my site and I show them what I've done for lean manufacturing, they've looked at something and they went, oh no.
It's like Sarah opening the kitchen, Sarah. When you pull back the kitchen window, you can see into the kitchen.
Just get that timing perfect, so it's just perfect when they look. That's the skill.
Okay, thanks for answering that.
What you said about the duck is exactly that. With under the water, hiding it all away.
So when you do lean, you're opening yourself up to that type of scrutiny. Right, so I'll move on here. So hospitality, I haven't done lean in hospitality, but I did a bit of research. And for me, just thinking about it, it's a repetitive process-driven industry. You're doing the same thing again and again and again, and that just, for me, that's something that lends itself to lean straight away. I said earlier, single piece flow and pull, you already have it. So because if you look at how covers are done in a restaurant, or if you look at how customers are dealt with in hotels or rooms are cleaned, it's all one at a time. So you've got that single piece flow, maybe not pull there, but there's elements of that already there that lend itself to say, yes, we can do that. And the third thing is it's got a business driver. These businesses are very much focused on cost. So you say, listen, I want to get some cost out of my system. Lean can deliver that type of thing. And just from doing the research, there's some examples there of people who have done it extensively. you want a case study, that UK resort in Japan, like Japan is, they love lean, so like they did it properly, like spent a lot of money, and what they did is they implemented lean, and as opposed to trying to make profits, what they did is they set up a world-class 5-star resort, and they're charging like 4-star prices. And that's what they're doing. So that's the approach they took. And these chains, they have implemented it too, just to reduce cost, and done it successfully. Obstacles, again, you need to be aware of what problems you're going to have, and be mature about it and address them up front. There are conservative management cultures in hospitality. It's conservative. I mean, there's been one way of doing things, and people are very reluctant to change it because it kind of does work. So why would you change it? The staff, by the nature of how they're employed, they're short term. There's high turnover. Maybe not the best paid. It's difficult to get participation for that type of people. So, but again, it's something, if you think you're going to get the gains from it, and you've got your business driver, it's worthwhile involving the people to do it. And that leads on to the cost of off-the-job training. You do have to take these people in off their job to do some training, that type of thing. But again, back to this slide, if you can get this 4-box, all of this applies to hospitality as well. The only one, when I put these pictures in, I noticed I put one of a bar. I don't think you can do lean in the bar. I just can't envisage this. And I don't think I'd want to go to a bar that had lean done to it. So maybe hotels and restaurants, yes, but not bars. So finally, where do you start? So you've listened to this and you think, yeah, well, that's made me think about it. Yeah, I think there's something I could do there. First of all, just a bit of reality. Typical deployment, you're going to put yourself on a hook for at least a year to do this. That's really how long it takes. So we're at this stage, we're conceptualizing it, we're trying to get a bit of buy-in from yourselves to say, well, yes, I could do it or I couldn't do it. The next phase would be education and transformation. And this is where the college can come in and help out and coach and train and give you all the expertise that we have. But then the real difficult bit is once we go away, you have to identify people in the organization who are going to sustain this. Continuous improvement sits at the end. It's just to make the graph look nice, but in real, as we said to Kieran earlier, you're doing it from the start, and it overlaps everything that you do. But 6 to 12 months, 6 months to get it in, another 6 months to try and get it sustained and make it part of your business. And what are the steps? Well, as I've said a good few times, the most important thing is have a good think of what your customers define as value. Just do it yourself, first of all. You're a business driver, or you're a business leader, or you're a business owner. Go and have a think of what your customers really think of value. You're probably focused on what your products are as opposed to your customer's value. Think again about value. Then go and take a look at your process yourself. Just go and have a look. There's a thing in lean called Gamba, which means go, look, see, and they do it a lot. So just go and take a look at your processes, whether it's a service or how people are processing data or people are actually making things. Go and look to see, well, that value you've identified, how much of it can you see? And the third thing for me then is you need to know what your business driver is. If you don't have your business driver, you'll not do it. To do something for 6 to 12 months, you need to have a decent business driver to invest your time and other people's time in this. There's not an awful lot of expenditure on buying stuff, or if you're manufacturing, you do spend a bit of money moving machinery about and that type of thing. But you are investing people's time in this, and you will continue to do so. So what's your business driver? Do you have one? Is it worthwhile to be able to do something for 6 to 12 months? Yes, well, this is probably right for you. And then it's about getting in touch and just business development here at the college. If you want to start with that, with myself, I will certainly, we've got half-hour free consultancy just to have a chat about it, to mull a few things over. And then if you think, yeah, it's worthwhile doing, we can come out and see, well, is there a project there? And do you have the time to do it? Do I have the time to do it? And, we'll put something together. And finally, just to say this is more support that's available to businesses from within the college. And these are all on our website. You can go and have a look. But these are all things that you can get support from. So there's lots of support out there if you decide to do something.
Maybe Sarah, you could come in there just before we take a few questions, just to talk a little bit more about that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Just so some of the support available from the college. There's up in the top left, there's the skills focus. It's a training program is funded by the DFE, and it's to provide non-mandatory training. It's recently been extended from 75% funded to fully funded in response to COVID-19. So that's any extra training you want for your staff. Some of the courses that maybe you've seen on our social media at the minute as well are all included in that. There's a lot of support there for that. So get in contact with about that. The Innovators program is 30 to 60 hours of mentoring or upskilling on a one-to-one basis. So that's for an innovative product, process, or service. So that's more of through direct to business support on the one-to-one with your business, either in your business or on our site. There's also innovation vouchers, and it's a way to avail of R&D opportunities. Although with this program, it's important to remember the VAT element that's at the end of it. Is funded by Invest NI, and Enterprise Ireland offer a similar program. There's a fusion program which offers businesses the opportunity to get a high caliber graduate into your business, partially funded through Intertrade Ireland, with mentor support provided by the college. And then the KTP project is a similar one funded by Innovate UK. So as you can see, we have a wide range of support available. So get in contact with the business support team at betterbusiness@src.se.uk, and we'll talk through your specific requirements and point you in the right direction. This is the last of the webinars that we're holding in this series, but there will be an autumn series and we'll be launching it soon. So keep an eye out for it'll be on our social media whenever we've announced it. This afternoon we'll be sending out a quick email with the links to the recording, links to the presentation, and a link to a survey for this. We'd really be grateful if you could spare us 5 minutes to complete the survey and let us know maybe ideas for our autumn series, where we could go next. Okay, back to you, Kieran, then.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks, Sarah. So, Jimmy, listen, that's a really, thank you very much. Really enjoyed that presentation, and lots of things for us to think about in business there. The Toyota, I've been driving a Toyota on my second Toyota, so I didn't know that about Toyota. Very, very interesting. And your application to, I suppose I work in public sector as we do in this unit. And I was starting when you had administration, you got me thinking about application to public sector. And then also the hospitality. I kind of grew up in the pub industry really, and I was thinking about that. And I was thinking, well, where does that sit? And you've helped to clarify that. And then applying that to industrial catering, again, that's something that I did for a while in my life. I could see exactly how it would work. And then I worked in hotels as well. I was thinking, actually, this would work in a hotel. So, I think for the services, and you highlighted Amazon there, but for the services related industries, here is something that you really need to be thinking about. And I suppose you talked about value seem to be coming through again and again in most of your slides. And your model, your four box model, if I can call it that, came up four times, and it was really good because it really reinforced what the learning and what people need to think about. Jimmy, there's a couple of questions certainly that I can see here. If I could move on to them, please.
Sure.
Could you give us a couple of examples of consensus techniques?
Yeah, it's very simple. Consensus techniques are where you sit down as a team and you discuss, first of all, problem solving is all about, first of all, figuring out what the problem is, identifying what the problem is, trying to figure out root cause, gather a bit of data, and come up with solutions. Those are 4 steps that no matter what method you have for continuous improvement, you will involve those. When you get the solution, or what you try and do is say, okay, right, different people have different solutions for how to fix this, and you need to have a way of breaking it down into, okay, well, what are criteria that everybody will agree on? So if you've got a problem like identifying, well, we've got lots of waste in our organization, and you come up with a list of 20, and you say, okay, right, well, you've only got time to focus on 2 of these. So a consensus reaching technique would be to say, okay, right, well, how are we going to do this? Get the team together and say, okay, well, everybody agree, well, what's the one that you see the most? Give me your top 5 of
Okay.
that you see the most. Give me your top
So,
5 that you see have got
in
the most.
terms of in the old-fashioned like priority listing or
Yes.
weighting
But
of some sort.
yes, exactly. So it's a weighting according to 2 or 3 or 4 different criteria, which will give it a score, which means that everybody gets a chance to score it, and the top 2 or 3 that you say you've got time to do, that will identify according to what everybody agrees are the ones we should be focusing on.
And are consensus techniques then, are they internal to the company or the organization?
Yeah, so again, it is just about identifying the criteria. The team who's actually involved in that bit of problem solving will, or if you're identifying, the consensus technique for value would be, if the salesmen come up with, well, this is what I think it is. The MD comes up with that. This is what I think it is. Customers will come back with, okay, what's this, this, and this. If you're trying to filter it down into, well, what are 4 or 5 things we can communicate to the organization? It's about those 3 areas, or maybe just the MD and the salespeople saying, okay, well, we need to agree on what this is like, and just set the criteria and say, okay, this is what we're going to go for. Because
it's interesting that there's terminology. You and I from different backgrounds here. There's terminology that I haven't heard before. Consensus techniques. So that's why I wanted to pick up this question. There's a couple of other questions in here. If you've got time to answer, Jimmy.
Sure.
What do you mean by business driver?
Business driver is it's normally down to, they're normally growth. Okay, so we go, my business driver is, I need to grow this business. So to grow this business, I need to do this, this, and this. So or it's, my costs are too high. For me to be able to compete with my competitors, I need to have either a cheaper price, or I need to be making more money out of it. Or business driver is, I need to get something more out of my supply chain. So you've went and you've analysed, and and business leaders of SME companies will know this already. So the thing that I need to fix with my company is this. And if you're at a stage where you're growing and things are fine, and you've got lots of sales and you have a product that everybody's buying already, you're probably not at the stage where you want to be implementing lean.
Is business driver, the ethos within the ethos of the leader? Is business driver, for example, continuous improvement, a drive to, going way back in my studies now, Peter's in the search of excellence. Is that you mentioned growth, but surely you can only grow so much. Is it satisfaction levels, or could it be all of those?
Yeah, well, I think if I bring it back to, there's a certain amount of resource within a company, with any size of company, and a certain amount of time that the people have, and there's then a matter of prioritizing what you need. Okay, so lean will take up a good bit of your time and some of the management resources as well. So you need to know that there is a driver there in the mindset of the leaders and with the organization, say, yes, this is worthwhile doing because we need this. And when I'm saying you need to know your business driver, a lot of people say, well, for lean it's cost. Well, it's not always cost. Like I give an example of, customer service was the main thing for the company. We had to improve our customer service to be taken seriously, so we had to focus lean on that side of things. So that was the driver. There's other companies I worked in where we had to improve margin. That's just it. We had been bought up by a company that were going to get rid of us again if we didn't improve margin. That was the driver for implementing lean. So it's very clear. It's understood. It was 1 or 2 things that that the MD of the company or the owners will say, yes, I agree.
Is it a broad terminology? Is it not specific? So, for example, like customer loyalty, customer retention, could it be as broad as that?
It can be, but I would say if you're going to start this, just from my own experiences, like if you're working for a company that's good at implementing stuff already, and if you look at some IT companies, for example, when they decide to do this, even though they don't have great business drivers, they do it because they've got that mentality and they've got those systems to implement stuff very quickly. Most other businesses, if you're going to change something, you need to have a crowbar to basically get it in there, and that's what I'm talking about. And because people are going to prioritize what they're doing already, as opposed to changing what they're going to do in the future. So if customer loyalty is identified as something that's going to lose your business if you don't do it, then that becomes a driver. But I'm just trying to make it sure people understand it won't work unless you have got the business driver, because nobody has enough time to do this type of thing unless there's a really good reason to do it, because it takes too long and it's too much investment.
Okay, there's a question coming in from Brian. Is Kaizen the same as continuous improvement?
Kaizen is part of continuous improvement. So Kaizen is what you will see on the floor. There's other parts of continuous improvement within the lean methodology. One of the things is AF3. It's basically it's a continuous improvement process where they basically take a team together, and if you can get all of the elements of what it is onto an A3 piece of paper, then you do it. If you can't, you don't. So, and then there are other high level stuff where you go in and you would do like changeover improvement, that type of stuff. But Kaizen is what you see the most. You see it on the floor. It's the most visible bit. It's a bit that everybody more or less starts with. Where it's very simple. You've got a concern, and really what's your countermeasure. And then once you've got the countermeasure identified, how you bring that back into the process. It's something you could do probably in 2 days.
Okay.
That's Kaizen. So if it's going to take longer, if it's going to be like, something that keeps repeating, a repeated issue, we thought we fixed it with Kaizen, it's still coming back, then you bring it to an A3 level where you bring a team together and they spend maybe 2 months fixing it. Oh. And then if it's still not working, then you need to go and do process reengineering.
Okay, you mentioned about the Lean Enterprise Academy and the Lean Enterprise Institute. Those are both, I think you said, voluntary organisations?
They're not for profit, so the people that get paid, yeah, but they're not, they're basically there for Lean, if you know what I mean. Like, so the people get paid a wage, but they're not a profit-making organisation.
Okay, but people could certainly have a look at those for further resources. Jimmy, I don't see any more questions. Just to sum up from our end, and I'll hand it back to you. Thanks a million for today. Really enjoyed it. This has been recorded. It'll go up to our YouTube channel. I'll let you just close out there, Jimmy.
Yeah, I just close very simply, just saying again, as I finished off, I think about the slides. This one here. Do that. If you've been on this or you're looking at it on YouTube afterwards, if you do that and you can say yes, no, maybe, then they could think this has been successful. That's all I want. Because Lean is there to try and help businesses, and that's why I'm here to do this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you.